Welcome to the Explainer. Let's jump right in. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating source text that dives deep into some pretty heavy philosophical stuff. We're talking sympathy, compassion, and what it actually takes to reach the absolute highest levels of human nature. It's the kind of text that makes you step back and look at, well, the entire history of mankind right alongside our own quiet, everyday struggles. We're kicking things off with this incredibly powerful premise straight from the text. Be sympathetic and compassionate. Love is the supreme level of human nature. It is the definite bridge and path to the Buddha. I mean, wow, notice how that immediately sets the stakes? We're not just talking about having good manners here. The text frames love and compassion as the literal bridge to spiritual elevation. It's the absolute peak of human potential. Section 1, the supreme human trait. Let's get into it. Before we get too deep in the weeds, the author makes this brilliant distinction between two words we kind of just toss around interchangeably. First up is compassion. In this specific framework, compassion is our macro-level reaction. It's how we respond to the overarching fate of human misery. You know that heavy feeling you get when you look at the sheer scale of suffering in the world at large? On the flip side, we have sympathy, and this is framed as our micro-level response. It's when we take pity on the tragic, very specific circumstances of an individual person. So basically, compassion is for the entire fate of humanity, while sympathy, that's for the one singular person standing right in front of you. So why do these two traits even matter? Well, the source argues that possessing sympathy and compassion actually subliminates our personality. Without them, we're honestly no different from a houseplant or a wild beast. It is precisely our ability to feel for the misery of others that makes us truly clever, intelligent, and reasonable. It's literally the defining line of our humanity. Moving on to Section 2, a history of misery. Let's pull back and look at the macro lens. When you zoom out and review human history, the source paints a pretty stirring picture. It points out that while some eras might look totally calm on the surface, it's just an illusion. Underneath that smooth, glassy surface, there is always this distressed, churning reality of both open and secret struggles. And the sheer scale of this suffering spans across wildly different eras. The text tracks it all the way from the biblical devastation of Noah's flood to the absolute nightmare of the Black Plague in modern Europe, straight through to the massive destruction of the Second World War. Misery isn't just a blip in one specific era, it's practically the running thread of the whole human story. And honestly, it's not just those massive, world-altering catastrophes either. We are constantly witnessing these endless, everyday wars and disputes between tribes, races, religions, political parties, interest groups, you name it. The author notes that constantly watching this endless cycle of conflict can actually make us lose our confidence in life itself. It's draining, right? This grim macro view really forces us to hit pause. The text throws out these massive rhetorical questions. Where is the wisdom of the human race? Where is the way out? And most hauntingly, was brutal struggle really the optimum power to drive human history forward? Looking at the past through this lens, you just can't help but feel this immense sense of grief and compassion. Which brings us to Section 3, the universal individual struggle. Let's zoom back in on the micro lens. Narrowing our focus down to the individual, the text poses a tough question. If you look at the dead, the dying, and the literal billions of people who will eventually die, how many of them actually acquired a perfect life? The answer? Practically none. And why? Because there is a universal plight lodged right in everyone's mind and body. Hunger, disease, anxiety, fear, worry, death. These inescapable burdens stop pretty much anyone from living a perfectly unrestrained life. What's really fascinating here is the massive disconnect between outward societal status and inward reality. You know, you'd think wealth or power is the ultimate cure, right? But it's not. The text points out that the momentous glory of a hero or a millionaire or an emperor, none of that can block their long-time hesitation. Even presidents, with all their absolute power, don't necessarily have more peaceful minds than the rest of us. A businessman's growing wealth simply cannot erase his inward anxiety. And even the temporary happiness of, say, poets, artists, or musicians, that can't conceal the long-term suffering in their minds either. And look, if all these powerful, wealthy, and creative people are struggling so much internally, the text points out that helpless, ordinary civilians are facing an even steeper, way more difficult climb. Okay, Section 4, when to withhold compassion. Let's talk about cautious sympathy. Now, here is where the source takes a really unexpected, almost plot twist kind of turn. After spending all this time establishing compassion as our absolute supreme trait, it introduces some highly pragmatic boundaries. It warns us that we actually need to be cautious with our sympathy. For people with a lot of self-respect, showing unasked pity can feel like a massive humiliation. So the rule of thumb here is, if someone is hungry or suddenly harmed, but they don't actively appeal to you for help, you shouldn't easily show them mercy or compassion. You've got to respect their agency and their pride. Plus, the source delivers a pretty stark warning about giving mercy to the unreasonable. We've all seen this, right? People with undistinguished love and hate who are completely capricious and who will literally bite the hand that feeds them. If you sympathize with that type of person, the text argues they're just going to bring you endless, draining troubles. To really drive this specific danger home, the text uses that classic fable of the farmer and the snake. Remember that one? The farmer showed pity to a freezing, poisonous snake, warmed it up, and boom, in return, the snake bit him to death. It's a really vivid metaphor from the source, reminding us that misplaced mercy can literally be fatal. Oh, and here's another huge rule from the text, this time applying to marriage. It states flat out that if you get married out of sympathy or pity for someone rather than actual fond love, you're making a massive mistake. As time goes by, you're going to lack real happiness, and in this really tragic twist of irony, you'll eventually become the object of sympathy yourself. So, we've covered the macro tragedy of history, the micro struggles of our everyday minds, and the very real boundaries of our mercy. And after all of that, we are left with this haunting, deeply memorable inquiry directly from the text. After thousands of years' exploration, man still cannot find a good way of living. Isn't that sympathetic? Man, what a thought. It really invites us to look at each other with a bit more grace, recognizing that we're all just trying to navigate this incredibly complex human condition together. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I genuinely hope this leaves you with a lot to chew on about how you view the struggles of the world and the very real people standing right in front of you.